Oh, well, yeah, and we are in something a little bit different. Now, if you've seen on my channel before, you might have seen me doing some videos before where I'm on the creation kit and I'm building something, this, that, and the other, la la la, music playing in the background, sped up footage, blah 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 blah. So, what I'm wanting to do now is I will be sort of start working on another mod, and I thought I'm gonna it's not so much take my time with it as per se, but I want to just like show some basic tutorials on how to get certain things done. This is not going to be for like advanced. You know, these aren't going to be like advanced tutorials. These are going to be basic, simple tutorials covering the basic things without needing to go into stuff like AI packages, messing around with scripts, messing around with texture swaps and stuff like that. It's just going to be just like, how do you create a person? How do you create a person? How do you create a follower? Basics of laying out a dungeon or player space or whatever kind of thing. You know, simple little things like that. Jumping into Nav Mesh, covering some basics with Nav Mesh, and this and that and the other. Obviously, these aren't going to be like excessively long, you know, but you know, and so you'll see me building this mod as well as hopefully possibly learning a couple of bits and pieces along the way. So first thing, before we get into the actual creation kit itself, if you are able to, I would suggest going on, if you've got an account with Nexus, obviously where you can get some download mods to PC for Skyrim and God knows how many other bloody games. Now, unfortunately, I can't remember it, but it'd be relatively easy to find. Is to go onto Nexus, go onto Skyrim Special Edition, and type in Creation Kit, and you will easily find it'll probably be in Raise with Creation Kit #1 search, and download. It's not really so much a mod. It's more of just like a secondary running program sorts that basically it just makes the creation kit run a little bit smoother, and you don't have to worry about dealing with so many warnings coming up all the time and this, that, and the other. It loads up faster and just basically makes the creation kit just run a bit better. But so yeah, to find that, all you gotta do is just go onto Nexus, go on the Skyrim Special Edition, and the search creation kit, and it'll probably be the top most downloaded one. If you don't have Nexus mods, then that's fine. You can obviously still work with creation kit. It's just that things might be a little bit slower. You'll have like some extra warnings coming up, which if you do get warnings coming up when you first like load up the master files, and it says like warning, duplicate, Dawnguard, land, something, just press yes to all. And all of that kind of stuff, you just press yes to all of them, because it's just a creation kit being a bit shit, basically. But right, with that little tiny thing out of the way, next thing we're going to cover is how to get multiple master files to load in your creation kit, as you can't load multiple master files straight off the bat. You can only load one master file per turn. If you don't know what a master file is, it's basically all the information that is in Skyrim itself is a master file. All the new assets, editor ID, scripts, textures, this, that, and the other, all of that kind of stuff, meshes, blah 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 blah, that were added in with Dawnguard, is put into a Dawnguard master file, and so on and so forth with all the other DLCs. But there is a way you can load multiple master files into your creation kit. And to do this, all you gotta do is basically, you want to go onto this PC, go down to whatever your, effectively your, in this case for me it's C drive, it's OS. So most likely if you're using a Windows operating system, it'll most likely basically be the same thing. But it's basically where you will find stuff like users, Windows, program files times 86, program files, and so on and so forth, that kind of stuff. So it's effectively, it's your hard drive, basically. And you want to go to program files 86, open that up, and then go to Steam, open that up, go to Steam apps, open that up, go to common, open that up, go to Skyrim Special Edition, open that up, and then you come with this here. So when you first install the creation kit, it will be installed in this. Do not worry about these here. These are dump files, which are from the creation kit modification that's downloaded from Nexus Mods, and these are just dump files, so it's just useless information. So just remember to every now and then, if you're going to use that modification, just remember every now and then to probably just empty some of these out, and you can just delete them and you're fine. So when you're in here, you want to go down to creation kit, open that up, and if you haven't opened it before, it'll most likely ask you how you want to open it. Do you want to open it in Word document, notepads, on the Internet Explorer, or whatever they call it now these days? I'm getting old. But basically you can just open it on Notepad. Pretty easy, nice and simple. Boosh. And you'll come up with all of this. Now obviously if you're someone who's not very computer savvy, or very new, or still new to modding, this, that and the other, yeah, a lot of this might look a little bit intimidating, because it's a lot of, it's a lot of words, there's a lot of string of paraphrasing, but trust me, it is very easy. So you'll want to add in this one here. So you want to go to general, and you'll want to add in, you can add it in, be allow multiple master files equal 1. Now now just for carry on, if this one here says equals 0, then change it to 1. Once you've done that, then you'll want to add in this line, be allow a multiple master loads equal 1. So you want to make sure that these are set up like this. So be allow multiple master files equals 1, and be allow multiple master loads equals 1. Once you got that in, you can go, you need to go down and go to archive. So you want to go here to archive, and you want to go to the S resource list 2. So you don't want to go for this one here, you want to go for this one down here, the one that's highlighted, and then you just want to move it along. Now initially when you come into here, what will end up happening is you'll come down here, come down here, come down here, and then you'll get to basically here, where you should be able to see a little thing flashing, and then it stops. There's nothing else after that, but as you can see on mine, there is actually something afterwards. After that, all you're going to want to do is basically put a comma, then a space, and then type in update type in, go on to the computer, type in update.bsa, put a comma, and it needs to begin with a capital U. After that, it will be another space, then dawnguard.bsa, comma, again beginning with a capital D, then it will be another space, then halfire.bsa with a comma, again with a capital H, and then a space, and then dragonborn.bsa, and that's it. And of course it begins with a capital D. If if you can't remember this when you try to add it in, just literally go onto Google, type in load multiple master files in Skyrim creation kit, and you'll find plenty of places that actually explain it and have on there how you write it out. This is just a basic, nice, simple little tutorial. Once you've got all that altered and all that written in, you'll just basically want to go to File, and then you'll just save it. Once it's done, you are free to close the notepad. You could then close this, and then you are technically ready to go. And yes, I do have an Inigo on my screen. Hello, Blue Cat. So once you're ready to go, you will need to obviously also download the Bethesda launcher and obviously create an account with them, but that is a piece of piss. Once you've done that, just hit on play. So obviously you're just going to wait for it to load. Sometimes it takes a couple of seconds to load because it's Bethesda and they're a pain in the ass when it comes to this shit. Sometimes it loads a bit quicker. It's just wanting to be a bit of a pain in my ass today. It's got to perform, so it was a bit nervous today. There we go. Now this, I just want to point this out once it's finished loaded. So this screen is to do with the creation kit modification that I have downloaded from Nexus Mods. Now, normally, what will happen then is you would, once you've got your creation kit loaded up, obviously you'll just go to File, and you'll want to go to Data. Click on Data, and then you'll come up with all of this. Now, if you don't have any mods installed or any mods created or anything like that, when you first start, you will literally just have basically Dragonborn, Hearthfire, Dawnguard, Update, and Skyrim, and that's it. That's literally all you would have. You wouldn't have anything else. You wouldn't have like this long list. It would just be the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It would be the top 5 off, done. So once you've done that, you're gonna so after this, you're gonna want to think about what you want in your mod. Like, what armors do you want in your mod? What weapons do you want in your mod? What magic effects you want in your mod? You know, and this and that kind of thing. You know, so you know, it's always a good idea just to give a rough plan of what you want to mod first. And if it's your first, obviously, if it's the first time modding, you know, I would say, unless you're a very computer savvy person, which I'm not, your best bet is to obviously just start small, have a little mess around with it, because it is quite easy to muck something up if you don't know exactly what you're doing. But what we're going to do, because obviously the mod I want to create, I'm going to want to use all of the master files. So we're going to cross that off, just double click on the boxes, just like so, and there we go. Now, normally, if you were going, say you start creating the mod, you saved it, you've gone off, you know, gone to get something to eat, gone to something to drink, gone to work or whatever. You know, you come back on a few hours later, blah 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 blah, and you think, you know what, I want to do some work on, Shadow Lurker, say for example. If you double click on Shadow Lurker, obviously it will tick it. Now you can just click it once. If you click it once, it won't cross the box there, but what you can see is what master files I've used. So you will always know which master files you need to also activate to actually make sure that the ESP is going to work fine. And then all you would normally do then is you would just normally make sure that the box is crossed, and then hit activate file, so then it says active file, and then press OK. But obviously we're not going to do that because we're not working on Shadow Lurker, because that's finished and uploaded and all done. But you can also do this if you want to do any kind of updates to any mods you've made. So, but we're not doing an update to Shadow Lurker, we are actually starting on something brand new. So since we're starting on something that is brand new, I do not need to create any kind of active file, so I can just click OK. Okay. Normally in this kind of situation, if you don't have the Nexus modification, you will start getting like a lot of like warnings coming up that says yes. It'll have some gibberish on it, and it will say yes, no, and yes to all. Just click on yes to all. It's just a creation kit being a piece of crap. So you can just click on yes to all, and you'll be fine. Which sometimes it can take a fair few, it could take a good 3 or 4 minutes for the actual creation kit to actually start. In this case, boom, we're already started, like 30 seconds. So that's what I would recommend, getting that Nexus modification for the creation kit. Refreshing. So, so obviously this is going to be your sort of first screen, and obviously you see we got a whole bunch of stuff here. I'm just going to shrink some of them down so it's a bit easier to keep track of what things are what. Yeah. So as you can see, we have we're not going to worry about like this top bar up here or anything like that for now. That will all be later, apart from like some of the basic stuff like this one, which is to save it, blah blah blah. But you got other stuff which is do like snap grid, snap turn, height map editing, landscape editing, Havoc Simulation, animate lights and effects, toggle lights, toggle sky, toggle grass, dialogue window, which I don't really tend to use, Nav Mesh, which I know can be the bane of a lot of people's existence, because it's the bane of fucking mine. And then you got a whole load of other things, but a lot of these other things, we're not going to worry about these things now. The main things we'll probably just think about is basically just like redo, undo, preferences, save plugin, which basically means you can click that, it'll save your mod as well as install it effectively into your game. And basically then all you'll just need to do then is just basically go into the game, load up the game, go to the mod, go to your load order and just enable it, and then bosh, and then you can test it, so on and so forth. So, first things first, obviously you got your render window. This doesn't really do too much. It's just basically where you will find, so we're going to click on that, and then bosh, there we go. Whole load of lines, there's a dragon, there's some red markers, and a whole load of blue lines and green crosses. Don't worry about that, that is pointless. We can get rid of that by just pressing the M button. Nothing there. Apart from the dragon. I mean, the dragon's still there, but it's a dragon. They're bloody up for it. But yeah, so what the render window itself is pretty simple. It's just basically when you open up either an interior space or a world space, which we'll cover at some point. It's basically, it will appear here. Basically, this is your window into the game, and where you will be doing all of the actual placing of things and movement of stuff and this, that and the other. This is basically your canvas, so to speak. Down here you have the cell view, which is basically, the cell view is obviously linked within the render window. So we got like a whole, got a whole bunch of here. So it says world space, interiors. The interiors is basically stuff that's like inside caves, inside Dwemer ruins, inside houses. Basically literally anything that's inside, anything that's behind the door that you have to load, most of the time will be an interior space. So for example, we have, let's find a good example. Alright, let's go and find everyone's favourite place, apparently. Or a place that seems to be very popular, apparently. So we can go down and we can go to, basically, go down here and you'll see here, Riverwood Sleeping Giant Inn. Just double click on that. And then, boosh, we are inside the Sleeping Giant Inn. So, this is what I mean by an interior space. Because as you can see, when you look outside, the rest of it's just grey, unless I toggle the sky, then you get the sky. But that kind of stuff is stuff we'll cover further down the line. But this is your basic interior space. You'll also find a whole load of other stuff here. So you got Japheth's Folly World, Caspar Redoubt World, Kateria World. What these are basically world spaces. And Tamriel is literally the entire Skyrim map. So, but world spaces, most of the time you won't mess around with them too much. Especially early on. It's very unlikely you'll mess around with them that much early on. But, if you want to know a little bit more about world spaces, just let me know in the comments below and I will cover what I know and can explain to you further down the line. But right, so we're done with that. So that's a basic introduction to Sound View, a basic introduction to the render window. You do have a bunch of hotkeys, like, you got to make sure to get the hotkeys to work. You got to make sure that the right enough here. You can't actually see my mouse, but where it says at the top of the render window, like Riverwood, Sleeping Giant in free cam perspective, you want to make sure that's black. It's blacked out, because if I click on something else, it basically fades out. So you want to make sure it's on and it's filled in. And you do get a bunch of hotkeys. So like if you press A, it toggles the lights. If you press M, it toggles markers. And you will use the shift key to move around the camera. Click on it to basically highlight something to move. You'll right click on something to bring up this, which is just like, you can either duplicate it, which basically just makes a copy. You can either copy it and then go into a completely different cell, right click in that cell, press paste, and then it will basically paste in whatever you copied. Cut is basically, it just deletes it. Or you can just highlight it like that and then just press delete on the keyboard and then bosh. You can do this, but this stuff will come to later. But it's just a place where you can do a bunch of stuff like, you can mess around with a few bits and pieces, but that will be further down the line. This is just basic stuff we're covering in this one. So, and you can also make some alterations to the reference window itself, like in the ways of like the movement of items in the window, how much it moves if you have the snap grid on, how much it turns if you have the snap angle on, the speed, the camera, so on and so forth, but obviously you lot can mess around with that to create some kind of, to get to what you want it to be. Right, so just to recap, this is your render window, which is basically just like your canvas. This is where you'll be putting everything in, making a lot of changes of what will actually be in game. Bang 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 bosh. This is where you will find world spaces and interior spaces, and then we've come to the object window, just where I normally tend to keep it just above the Sound View window. But we come to here, the object window, where you can see a lot of stuff. Now I'm not going to cover everything on this, because there's actually quite a lot of things. But we'll cover the main ones that you'll probably most likely see me primarily using within this. So I will try and not speak about this too fast, because obviously I've been doing this for ages, so it's all relatively quite easy for me, so I might end up being a bit too fast. So I will try and bring it back. So first off, we got actors. Obviously you can see we got actor, actor action, body part data, leveled character, perk, and talking activator. Primarily with this, the main one most time you'll just mess around with is just actor, which basically an actor is like Delphine here. Delphine is an actor. Ognar is an actor. It's just basically another name for NPC. And then obviously, so if you open up actor, you get another actor here. Open up that actor, you have actor preset. Preset, you don't really need to mess around with. Presets are a bit funky anyway. Even on the best of days, they're a bit funky. So you mainly want to go to just the actor, And then you can see you got like Alduin race, Argonian race, Ultranaut Flame race. So this is obviously basically all like the races of the NPCs, the enemies you'll encounter, this, that and the other. So let's just say, for example, let's just go Breton. So we'll click on Breton, and then when we click on Breton, as you can see, it gives us every single actor who is actually part of the Breton race. Obviously you'll have some that are like this, where it's like Enchanted, Warlock, Necro, and F. So that'll basically just be like a Necromancer Breton, female Breton. And this one, for example, will be a male Breton who is also a Necromancer. You know, this kind of thing you'll be able to work out by yourself. I won't need to explain every single one of these. This kind of stuff, but you'll be able to work yourself. But then you also got other ones where it's just like Enmon, Garvey, you know, just singular names, which obviously these are the people who most of the time you'll end up basically just bumping into cities and stuff like that. Tra-la-la-la, you know. And you get that with everything else. So you've got your dragon races in here, this, that and the other. So if you want to create a person, this is where you go to do it. So let's just, so we'll come back to this. In a way, sort of like, we'll actually cover making NPCs and stuff like that in the next video after this. This is just a very basic introduction for now. Next one is audio. This you won't mess around with really too much. Really, I don't think there isn't really any necessarily need to, unless you're modding on Xbox or PC. Then you might start adding in your own music tracks and stuff like that. Though I can do that, I'm not going to cover that within this series. On the premise of this is more aimed, well, it's not more aimed, but it's just to cover the stuff that you could do on PlayStation basically. Because obviously since PlayStation is a little bit restricted on what you can actually do. But as you can see, you got music track, music type, sound marker, sound descriptor, sound category. But in this series, audio is not really a thing we'll end up messing around with too much on that one. Then you have character, which you got stuff like association type, class. So you got like combat nightingale, combat rogue, blade. You know, so this is a lot of this would be sort of like how people sort of like fight you, or what kind of job that they do, and this, that and the other is what makes a person that person, in a manner of speaking. But again, class, it's not really a thing that we'll mess around with this. Equip slot, it's not a thing we'll mess around with. Factions, now, factions is something we will be messing around with, because factions is what make followers followers. What makes people who you can marry marryable. It's what makes the vendors vendors. It's what makes the vampires hate you. You know. So we won't be obviously covering every kind of type of faction, but we will be covering more or less the main kind of factions that you will use, which is like follower faction, merchant factions, and possibly another type of faction. It all depends, but primarily it'll be follower, merchants, and marryable factions. That's the kind of thing we'll mainly be covering within this series. Head part is just about stuff at the heads, you know, so you can double click it, for example, and you can alter like effectively which sort of basically which gender gets it, whether it's just male or just female or both, what kind of type of thing it is, what models they are, texture sets, valid races. But again, that's something we won't be messing around with too much. But if I do think about it, I might do a little bit of messing around with this at some point in the series, but there's no 100% guarantee. Package is something we won't directly really be covering, though I will explain some little minor things with packages, just so it allows people to sort of like move around. AI packages themselves, because this is basically AI to a degree. These kind of things are things that I haven't messed around with too much in the past, but I know the basics of understanding how so then they, characters will move around and interact with different objects and interact with different furnitures and stuff like that. The main things you need them to do, without it being like a patrolling guard or something like that. Quest, we're not really going to be worrying too much about quests. Again, that's not a thing I mess around too much with, primarily because it does involve scripting a large chunk of the time, and that's something I don't mess around with, is scripting, because I don't understand Papyrus. Then you have race, which is basically, what, Argonian race, brown race, Alden race. So, this is basically all the races of the animals or people that you bump in the Skyrim. We may mess around with one or two of these, possibly, so, if I could pick up a reason, we'll bring it up. Relationships is not a thing you need to do that often, but it will crop up further down the line. Then you got voice types, which is just like, all the voice types in the game, this, that, and the other, blah 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 blah. Nothing crazy, bada bing, bada boom, bada bosh. Then you got items. Again, this is pretty simple stuff. Ammo is just basically just like your bows and your bolts. Armor is pretty self-explanatory. It's all your armor, clothing, bits of jewelry, just it's all like the stuff you can wear that you'll find in the game. Armor add-on is basically what gives it. Its texture, basically. So it's what makes that piece of clothing look like that piece of clothing, is the armor add-on. But that's something we probably will mess around with, so you will get to see what's going on with that further down the line. Then we got books. That's pretty self-explanatory. It's books. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's books. Spell books, rare books, journal books, letters, all the stuff you can read is found in books. Constructable objects is basically anything to do with like basically like smithing and smithing weapons, improving weapons. With half-fire, you do have it with half-fire as well, but we'll primarily concentrate on just doing it for like making improvement recipes for armors, improvement recipes for weapons, so you can make them stronger and better, this, that, and the other kind of thing. So that is something that will come up in the series down the line. Ingredients is just basically all your chemical ingredients. Keys is basically your keys. Miscellaneous items is just basically all the random odd bits of junk you'll primarily find, so like tankards, baskets, buckets, more buckets, skulls of antlers, that's kind of like your miscellaneous stuff, and it does cover a couple other things like the children's clothing and a few other bits and pieces, but we'll be looking through a chunk of that probably throughout this series. Outfit is when an outfit is basically, you can create a new outfit and say put in, I don't know, say you've made yourself a new set of enchanted glass armor, with unique enchantments, and you wanted to give it to a follower. Best way to get the follower to wear it is to basically create an outfit in this outfit tab. So you'll basically right click and click on new, it'll come up here, then you'll go to armor, you would just go to armor like this, then you would basically grab basically, let's just say this was your newly enchanted glass armor, you would then grab it, drag it over, and drop it in, and then you'll do the same with the boots, the gauntlets, helmet, shield, until you basically had it all in here. Then you'll just give it an ID, press OK, And then when you're creating your character, which we will go through, there is an Infantry tab where it asks you for a default sleep outfit and a default outfit. You select your outfit you created in their default outfit, and then they will start wearing the entire outfit. But again, that kind of thing we will cover further down on in the series. Soul gems, weapons, very self-explanatory. You find pretty much them all here, this, that and the other. Next we have magic, which magic has a couple of bits and pieces in it. So you got dual cast data is I haven't really messed around with dual cast data, so I don't really exactly know what the hell it's all about, to be honest. But it's not really a thing that seems to come up all that often that needs to be messed around with and all that, so it's probably not really a thing that you'll probably want to worry about anyway. The main thing you'll want to worry about, at least one of them, is enchantments. So obviously this is where you get all the enchantments that you can find on weapons, armors, staffs, jewelry, clothing, you know, they're all in here. You know, they're all in this bit, in the enchantment bit. Leveled spells, I think that seems to be some more, it's kind of looking more like certain areas of the game where you'll use that, but you wouldn't really be messing around with leveled spells all that much. Magic effects is basically what gives the magic that actual effect. You know, it's pretty you know, it's on the tin, magic effect. You can do a lot of messing around with this. I may do like a little bit messing around with 1-2 of them, but again, we will basically come and cover that further down the line. Potions, it's basically potions, but you can find stuff in here where it's just like clutter. You know, you got common, dead animals, dummy items. Dummy items, not really too much. Don't really need to worry about them too much, really. But you know, you got food, ingredients, potions, wines, common stuff. And you got stuff from the Half-Fire DLC. You got stuff here from Dawn Guard, stuff here from the Dragonborn, plants, you know. So you'll find potions, you'll find your potions, and a lot of like kind of like food items in this one. Scrolls. Spells are basically spells. So if you want to create an actual new spell that you can actually use, if you're creating a mage or some kind, you would also create a spell for them. And the way that you create a spell, it's fairly similar to how you create an enchantment. You know, it follows the same premise with just a few slight variations on what certain things that you've got actual access to, kind of thing. A lot of that. Shouts and word of power. This at this point, like shouts, spells, and word of power to create something that's like a new shout to give to a dragon, say for example. If I can remember correctly, you need to create a spell. You create a spell. You put whatever spell it is on there. Bada bing, bada boom, bada bosh. Then you need to create a set of word of powers. And with those 3 words of powers, or one, you might work with just one. You then give the spell you created to that word of power. Then you need to create a shout. And with that shout, you give that shout the word of power that you created from the spell that you first created. If that sounds a little bit like long-winded, a bit complicated, don't worry. I'm sure I will probably cover this at some point further down the line, because I tend to make a lot of dragons have fun, so it's bound to come back at some point. Miscellaneous, again, it's one of those things where a lot of stuff won't be covered in it. You'll see a few bits and pieces, so you know, you'll see me using some idle markers, which are these are basically things that basically NPCs will interact with. You know, for example, as you can see, you know, you got browse idle marker, you got chicken feeding, clean a weapon, come this way, cow eating, you know, it's stuff that basically NPCs will interact with their so-called radiant AI, and they'll just go around and interact with them, kind of thing. Blah 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 blah. Keywords are keywords, but we don't really need to worry about the keywords too much. Land textures, again, don't really need to worry about them too much. Load screens, don't need to worry about them too much. The only other one that we might obviously mess around with a little bit is texture sets, into the ways of actually creating some of our own texture sets, specifically to be used on either weapons or armors or certain pieces of architecture. But again, we will cover that further down the line. Special effects, we're not really going to be doing anything with special effects on this, so we're not going to worry about that too much. But as you can see here, we got a bunch of stuff like image space, lens, flare, material object, volumetric lighting, so on and so forth. But we're not really going to be messing around with special effects that much on this, so we don't need to worry about that too much. World data is another one we're not really going to be messing around with, because what we will be making is an interior space, so we're not really going to be having like stuff like weather and climates in there. So you won't really see all that much, but you know, this is kind of where you would do stuff, yeah, like the climate, the weather, locations, for like persistence locations, some visual effects, this, that and the other. But like enough in this, we're not going to cover it because this is more, I'm not going to say it's advanced, but it's not necessary for this series. And then we have world objects, which this covers a lot of things. So we got activators. Now activators are like basically, a simple way to explain the activator is basically it's like the pull levers you get in dungeons, or the pull chains you get in dungeons. You know, so we basically pull chains, levers. There's a few critter spawners, and you know, there's a lot of stuff. So normally, something if you have to activate and activate it for it to do something, it will most likely be in here as an activator. Containers are literally just stuff like your barrels, your treasure chests, wardrobes, cupboards, this, that and the other. Basically, any object, pretty self-explanatory. Basically, anything you can actually store stuff in, that's a container. And there you go, and this is where you'll find it, in world objects and in container. Doors, the door, what else can I say about a door? So the door, you will find not just doors that will open into another room, you will also find load doors that load you into a new area. But again, activators we're probably going to be using in this series, containers we're definitely going to be using in this series, doors we're definitely going to be using in this series. Flora is just stuff like coin purses, dead salmon, mushrooms. We might use some of this stuff in this series. So flora will probably end up using furniture, pretty self-explanatory, beds, benches, chairs, bedrolls, and there will be a few other ones like crafting stations and stuff like that. Will all fall into furniture, but again, further in the series, we will be using a lot of furniture, so that will be covered pretty much later on in the series. Grass, we won't really be using this in this series because the grass, when it's here, you can't like drag it into the render window because it's not actually supposed to be used in the render window. This grass here is used for something else. Lights is literally lights, you know, these kind of lights, that kind of light. Movable static is basically, you know, you'll have a bunch of stuff in movable static. So as an example, you'll have a bunch of, you know, you got banners, we have bones that you will normally find on the floor that when you actually walk into them they actually move. That's what it means by movable static, is stuff that can be interacted with or seen moving but can't be taken. That's a effectively what a movable static is. So that it's a very aesthetic, basically, items. Aesthetic items, basically. In the same ways as static, which are basically things that don't move, because they're static. But as you can see, there's a lot of stuff in static. Now we will be using a lot of this, so I wouldn't worry too much about trying to figure out what all of this is, because we will be going through probably a large chunk of this stuff. Not everything, but a large chunk of this stuff throughout this entire series. Because this is basically the building blocks of building inside, inside building, inside the interior. So the buildings, caves, dwelling ruins. Static objects are the building blocks of that. So yes, it looks like a lot there, and yes, it does look like it's a lot here. But we will be going through this quite a bit in the series, so no, not to worry. And you know what, the static collection doesn't do anything. I don't even know what it's supposed to even do. It's just there, and it just wanted to tag along with the party. And then you got trees, which will basically just be any kind of plants you see in the landscape, in the way of like your aspen trees, your pine trees, and a whole lot of other little trees and thickets and shrubs and stuff like that. Plants, and it's basically all the stuff that you can actually pick for alchemical usage. So it'll be stuff like your dragon's tongue, your nightshade, your lavenders, your melting flowers. So these are actually interactable, pickable plants. And then you got the options obviously also for DLC 2, which is Dragonborn, DLC 1, which is Dawnguard, and Boyo, which I'm going to call it, Boyo, which is basically Heart Fire. So you got all your stuff there. But we will probably be using some of this stuff in this series, so obviously we will come back to this in a future video. So no need to worry about that now. As this again is just a nice simple, well hopefully simple, probably not, introduction to the some of the basics of covering over what the actual creation kit is and what you can find and where you'll find some of the stuff, this, that and the other, blah 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 blah, getting you to understand the creation kit when you first see the screen. So last but not least, we're going to cover just a few things up here. I'm not going to cover everything because there's no point covering all of it now. I'm just going to cover a few things up here. So obviously, yeah, like, you got like this, which is like load master plugins and blah blah blah, which obviously is just this, but we don't need to worry about that. Obviously you got your save option, save plugin, then hot load into game on PC. So basically what that does is that you'll click that, it will save what work you've done, and then it will then basically, as it says, hot load it to your game in the PC. So then all you gotta do is launch Skyrim, go to the mods, go into your load order, then you'll have to go to the bottom of your load order, and you'll find so you should be able to see the ESP name. You'll find it. All you gotta do is then just enable it, and then bosh, you can do a lot of testing, and and that's how you'll probably do a lot of testing with the mods. What works, to see what does work, what doesn't work, this, that and the other kind of thing. Bada boom, bada boom, doing some fine tuning and stuff like that. Preferences, again, it's just this little here, but you got like stuff like Miscellaneous, which got a whole bunch. This I don't normally tend to really all mess around with, apart from like maybe this, the movement one. It's like the only one I really do any kind of messing around with, blah blah blah. But you can keep it as it is. You don't need to actually make any alterations to it. Then obviously you got your undo, redo, basic computer stuff there. You got Snapgrid. Snapgrid basically, let's just show you. So Snapgrid, now I'm going to move. So as you can see, he's juttering along. As you can see, Orgnar is just juttering. Whereas if I was to turn the Snapgrid off, he moves a lot smoother. So obviously the snap grid, basically it snaps things into place. This is a snap grid is good to use to help you get your basic layout made for your dungeon, and then maybe for the stuff that you want to put in it if you're making a dungeon or if you're making a house. And then, but once you got all your stuff in there, then you can turn the snap grid off and then just do like your little bits of like fine tuning of movements and stuff like that, you know, and just move that to there and give a little spin around, and, you know, move that to, and move this to there, you know, just little bits of fine tuning. Then you have the snap angle, which is basically very similar to snap grid, but what it does, it snaps on the axis. Now at the moment it's default at 45, so each time when you turn whatever you've got highlighted, like organ here, it will turn at a 45-degree angle. Whereas if you have snap grid off, again it spins around much more smoothly without being the snapping. So once again, snap grid and the snap angle are good to start with when you're building your cave or your home or whatever kind of dungeon you're building and stuff like that. Just to get the basic layout out done, get the basic decorations in there, and then you could turn them off and then do all the fine tuning. Height map and landscape editing, we're not really going to mess around with this on here, primarily in this series, on the premise of because we're not building the world space, which is where you would use those two things. Havoc Simulation basically runs the physics engine. So as you can see, for example, I'm just going to lift up this cup, but as you can see, it's jolting about. It's very happy. It's a very happy cup. But if I was to turn this run Havoc Sim off, I can then move the cup and it stays up in the air. And if I was to turn it on, you can see it drops. And that's the Havoc, and that's basically what the Havoc Sim, that's all that basically the Havoc Sim does. And then you have toggle lights on and off. You have toggle sky on and off. And grass you would only really use if you create a world space, and that's it. And then Nav Mesh. Quickly give you a quick showing of Nav Mesh. This is Nav Mesh. It is the bane of my fucking existence, and I hate this stupid ass bar up here. This thing is just the bane of my bloody existence. But we will be obviously covering this further down the series, but quite later on into the series we'll be covering Nav Mesh. So probably most likely by then you would have had to go with Nav Mesh and then just hate it just as much as I do. But right, so yeah, this has not been an in-depth tutorial video, this has not been an in-depth look to how everything works. This is a basic 101 introduction to the creation kit. It's a way of how it looks, what each bit does, where you'll find some of the basic stuff, bada bing bada boom, how some of the basic things work, and how to basically get yourself basically started. Obviously I know some stuff you will be able to basically work out on your own. If you do decide to have a go on your own, and let's just say, just for example, this is a little free tip here, so just say for example you want to create yourself a sword, let's say you want to create yourself a powerful Daedric sword, for example. Now, you would probably be tempted to basically go to Daedric sword here, click on here, do a load of alterations on here by making this go up to 14 million health, of damage, 14 million points of damage. So it does basically 65,535 points of damage per second, so basically a one-hit killer. And that would be tempting for you to do. Only thing is though, if you do that, then that alters every single Daedric sword in the game. Changes every single one. So, before you go making a extremely powerful Daedric sword, even if it's not enchanted and you just want to make sure that it does more damage, what you are going to want to do is right click on the Daedric sword, then go to duplicate that sword, then double click on the duplicate version, and then you can make whatever alteration you want. So let's go 1400 alph for example, and if you want to keep everything else the same, you can. If you make some basic alterations, so you could alter its weight, so it's like, you know, it weighs literally 1 pound, you know. Even though the sword doesn't grow any longer, it has double the reach, so you'll be hitting people with an invisible blade. You can make it basically 10 times faster, so you'll be going stupidly fast. It does appear that the maximum amount of damage you can do is 65,535. Critical damage, you know, you can do 5,000 critical damage, and then you multiply that by 10%. So, you know, critical damage is 5,000 times that by 10%. That is a lot. Stagger, much stagger it does. You know, this, that, and the other. Give it an enchantment if you want. If you do give it an enchantment, you will need to put a number in here. I know a good number would be something like 2,500 or 3,000 would be a good number to put in here, for example. But the main thing you want to do, after you've done all your crazy multiple times tables, the most important thing you need to do is go to the ID, and then, for example, just to make things easier, begin it with a 0, just to make it easier to find. Then, this is what I tend to do, and then think of a specific word that's relating to the mod that you're making. So, for example, I will put, I don't know, Swiss. Obviously we're not doing Swiss this thing. You might want to try do what you can to make this a kind of a more unique word, but it's not necessary. And then we'll just call it, I don't know, we'll just call the editor ID Swiss cheese. So you do need to remember that you have to change the editor ID. Well, you can keep it as what it is there, but it's just easier if you change it. Once you've done that, you click OK. Then you click on No. Then you click on Yes. And then there you go. Now you can see it's disappeared from there. But if we go up, here we are. And here is Swiss cheese. Just it. Now that is completely unique. And it won't override every other Daedric sword in the game. Just one thing to bear in mind, and that's the same with any other item you want to make alterations to, whether it be armor, weapons, ammo, potions, ingredients, whatever you want to make. If you want to make an alteration to it, duplicate it, make your alterations, give it a new editor ID, bosh, done. And then once you've done all the bullshit you want to do, you'll click on the floppy disk, you'll come up with this screen up here, and then you'll basically give it a file name, but we're going to call this 2 cities, because that is what we will be making throughout the series, or at least part of it. I don't know if I'm going to make the entire thing, because otherwise we won't be here for absolutely ages, but I'll be at least making part of it. So give it a name, actually relating to whatever the hell you're making it for, then you just click save, and done. Simple, nice and simple. And obviously, yeah, all this stuff will, you know, will come to people over time. You know, it's sometimes, you know, some people will pick this up very quickly, other people will pick it up a bit more slowly. You know, it all depends. But it is just basically just take your time with it. We got ages until fucking Elder Scrolls 6 comes out. So Skyrim ain't going anywhere too bloody soon. I mean, we've even got the bloody, what, is it the anniversary edition coming out in a couple of months? I mean, like, you just can't get rid of it. So Todd, just stop releasing Skyrim and just get on to Elder Scrolls 6. I know you're doing Starfield as well, but we know that's coming out now. So concentrate on Elder Scrolls 6, get that out for us. We want a new Elder Scrolls. That isn't another fucking version of fucking Skyrim. But right, anyway, that is a basic introduction to Creation Kit. It's a very basic induction, but as I've said throughout the entire video, a good chunk of this stuff we will be going through in a bit more detail further down the series, whilst we're making Two Cities, or at least what's going to be ended called A Tale of Two Cities. So further down the line, you might be able to learn a bit more. If you're still someone who's still a bit unsure on Creation Kit, or is just struggling a little bit with Creation Kit, or you might pick up some things that you haven't known before. But right, so you can like this video if you want. It's entirely up to you. Completely and entirely up to you. But you can also subscribe to the channel. Once again, just entirely up to you. If you want to, you don't have to. You can also find me on Twitter or find me on Discord. There will be literally links in the channel banner, or literally in the about page on my channel. Because I've tried putting in the description and I've just gotten lazy again. I'm getting too old for this shit to do this. So, but anyway, hopefully you will be looking forward to my series. Hopefully my content gets a bit better, because this has probably been a bit sporadic and a bit fast for some people, but hopefully it'll get better, it'll become more understandable, and hopefully just a bit more interesting, because I'm pretty sure this has been probably kind of quite boring, to be honest. It's not my proudest moment. But anyway, there's plenty of other videos that you got on my channel for you to watch as well. There's other Skyrim videos, there's a few other games that I've messed around on in the past. Bada bing, bada boom, bada bosh, bada bing, bada boom, bada bosh, bang bosh. So until the next time, I'll see you all later.